Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I am Big Italy 42, joined here by Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life, and we're talking about all the action tonight on DraftKings. And by all the action, I mean all the action starting at 7:05. I don't like to dabble with those weird 6 o'clock slates. I like my extra hour of lineup building, so we're just going with the main slate starting at 7:05. If you're playing those slates, maybe find one of us on Twitter. I'll be looking into it. I'll play some games, but most of my volume is going to be the normal slate here tonight. How about you?
Yeah, mine too. It just gives you so many more lineups out before you have to submit a somewhat final lineup. That extra hour makes it really tough. I really like that all the sites leave it out for the most part of the main slate because there's so many 9 o'clock, well, I guess 10 o'clock games Eastern, that it's just too hard if you're starting an hour earlier because you have to get really lucky to get a lineup 4 hours in advance sometimes from those games.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the Dodgers. We've been seeing their lineup. Obviously, they usually play late, but their lineup also coming out really late each night too. So, all right. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and start off with starting pitcher, where everyone's favorite pitcher that they love to hate right now, negative 15.2 last time out. Maybe it's mental with the Yankees, maybe it's not. But David Price in a great spot here against the Minnesota Twins. If it wasn't for Brad Ausmus being a terrible manager, then he would have had a complete game shutout against this team on opening night with 8 2/3, 5 Ks and 30.5 fantasy points. I don't see any way that he's not the top option here again tonight.
Yeah, I don't either. I played Felix Hernandez on Friday in the same situation. I think you just keep attacking these teams like Minnesota and Milwaukee until they start hitting. If you just every day played the pitcher against those teams, you'd be doing pretty well right now.
Yeah, I'm hoping that his ownership level is down because people are upset about that last start. But David Price gave up 1 earned run in his first 3 starts before that. So, he's still one of the best pitchers in the game. You could be scared off if you like. I will not be. I'll be getting tons of David Price. You could send me some more hate that some of us got for playing David Price last time, but I'm going back to it again tonight. It's hard not to.
Yeah, there's no real argument you can make against it except he burned me last time. And when that's your only real argument, I'm taking the top option at pitcher almost 100% of the time on FanDuel and cash games. I'm doing the same thing at DraftKings for the most part when there's 2 pitchers. You don't want to save a little bit here and then spend up a little bit at your other pitcher. If you're going to save money at your second pitcher. Worry about it from there in cash games. It just makes too much sense to play him tonight.
Yeah, that's a viable strategy. That makes sense. And that's the beauty of DFS. Have a short memory. Last game doesn't matter. Last week doesn't matter. Move on to tonight. Cole Hamels, the guy I'm not a big fan of tonight. He's at $9,800. He's given up 7 home runs already to right-handed hitters in 18 1/3 innings. Been actually getting crushed by righties. Got a 12% walk rate. I'm not touching him, not even in tournaments tonight. How about you?
Yeah, probably not. If I'm looking in that price range, I think I'm going James Shields against Houston. In that home park at San Diego, not a lot to argue with here either. Decent favorite. Yeah, huge strikeout rate so far. Houston's been striking out a ton, so that's a great matchup there. Pretty solid favorite for Shields. I really like him tonight. I also like Kluber. There's really a decent amount of options at the top here. Even Colin McHugh at San Diego, he's the underdog there, but a decent price discount, has some nice strikeout upside. There's a lot of quality pitching options today.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I like both sides of that, Shields and McHugh. 6-run total right there in Petco Park. Obviously the best best pitchers park in the game. 6-run total. 2 guys are pitching very well. I don't really mind either side of that. You like to think Shields would probably be the more higher owned option because he's got the name recognition, all that. $900 discount for McHugh, like you said, he is the underdog, but I think they're both in a good spot. I think it's going to be a pitcher's duel, so I think both those guys in play. I'm going to get your take on a cheap guy I'm looking at here for tournaments, and Tim Lincecum. Looking at his numbers, obviously it's a tough matchup against the Dodgers, but Lincecum's been great so far this season. Not as far as walk rate. His walk rate's 10%, but 60.4% ground ball rate. And a lot of these Dodger bats, including Adrian Gonzalez, are lefties, and he's been really tough on lefties. 181 WOBA allowed, 4 singles, no extra base hits, and 35 plate appearances. So obviously not going to maintain those numbers there, but I think he's a nice tournament option at under 7K.
Yeah, definitely. He's looked great to start the season. We all know that he can blow up at any time. That's what makes him a GPP play. But, I mean, with this start, that price, I feel pretty good about that. there's not really a lot of cheap options I feel really great about. I mean, Brett Anderson on the other side of that game is the favorite. I'm okay with him. 6,000 on DraftKings. That's a great price. Um, I mean, even that though, like I don't feel overly excited about playing. He's probably going to be one of my second pitcher options in cash games. I prefer Lincecum, like you said, in GPPs. It feels like a little bit more upside there, where Brett Anderson pitches to contact a little bit more. Hasn't been striking many people out lately. If I'm going cheap, I'm probably looking at those two guys. Not a ton else I really like down here. Ubaldo Jimenez is an okay guy. Facing the White Sox, who've been struggling a little bit. He's up to 7,200 though now because he's actually been pitching pretty well. So his price isn't one that I feel really, really good about either.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to go really crazy at $4,700, Jason Marquis pitched pretty well against the the Brewers last time, at least for the first couple innings. Got 8 Ks, but gave up 5 earned runs. I would only play him if I am playing like a crazy stack in a tournament and just going every top hitter at every position. Maybe still pair him with Price. I mean, $4,700 for a starting pitcher against a lineup that isn't hitting well. It's incredibly risky, but he does have almost a 30% strikeout rate somehow this year. But a 5.02 WOBA allowed to righties, and this is a righty-dominant lineup. So maybe a single bullet if you're going crazy.
Yeah, at 4,700 though, I mean, he doesn't even have to pitch very well for you to feel okay about it. If you're getting the hitters you want and your hitters produce, that's what it comes down to.
Exactly.
That's what makes him more of a tournament play. You need your hitters to produce that you're spending on. I mean, if you're going to pay up for too low or something like that, I mean, you're just like, you need your hitters to produce because he's not going to give you 7 innings of shutout baseball ever. And while he has a 30% strikeout rate coming into the game tonight, I can't see him giving you 10, 12 strikeouts in this game either.
Yeah, no, that's an unsustainable number at this point.
Right. So, I mean, the big thing here, like you mentioned, is Milwaukee. He's a favorite because Milwaukee hasn't been hitting. Like we said at the top of the podcast, you're playing a pitcher against Milwaukee. You've been doing pretty well so far. Lucroy's still out. I mean, none of their big bats are really hitting. I mean, Aramis Ramirez has been doing nothing. He's hitting in the 5 hole still. So, I mean, there's definitely a reason to look at him at that price. I mean, it's crazy cheap.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, we're going to move on here to catcher, where Buster Posey has not been playing well, but he's still, talent-wise, your top option at $4,300 there. A guy that I really like, but he does not have catcher eligibility. I guess I won't talk about him on this one. I'm used to, we were talking FanDuel a minute ago. Anyway, I'll move on to him for first base. But elsewhere, Nick Hundley, if he's in the lineup, has been hitting the ball really well, playing at Chase Field at $3,500. I like him as a cheap option. There's not a whole lot I like here at catcher. AJ Przinsky, of course, if he's in the lineup, he's been hitting the ball well. He's $3,100. Is there anyone else you're really looking at here at catcher?
If I'm not playing Lincecum, I don't mind Yasmani Grandal. 3,000. Been hitting righties pretty well. He's been hitting about 5th in the Dodgers lineup most of the time, especially against righties. I think he's an all right play. You mentioned Posey already. There's not really anyone I feel too strongly about. I mean, there's not a lot of guys hitting at the top of the lineup. Evan Gattis is a guy that I've been playing in GPPs over and over and over again.
Just waiting.
Yeah, just waiting. I got 1 home run out of him, I think, like a week and a half ago or something like that, and I was really excited. And then he went 0 for 4, like 4 games in a row after that. But he's a GPP play for me. I don't mind him. Derek Norris is a guy that I don't mind just because he's pretty cheap, 3,400, hitting second in the order most nights. He's a guy I don't mind too much. Yeah. Nothing else that I'm really overly excited about a catcher, though.
Yeah, only one other guy I'm going to throw in for a GPP is Wilson Ramos against Eric Stoltz, assuming he's got a decent lineup spot. I mean, it's kind of risky, but Eric Stoltz pitched well in his last game. He's not that good of a pitcher. He's actually a pretty bad pitcher, so someone's going to probably get a hold of one here. He's got a really high home runs per 9 throughout his career, and I expect that he's going to give up some runs tonight, so he might get a part of that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to first base. Paul Goldschmidt's in a great spot today against the lefty at home at Chase Field. A bad lefty at that, but $5,700, pretty pricey, especially if you're paying up for pitcher. So that makes him more of a GPP option. It's going to be hard to fit him in your cash games there. A guy I really, really like is Victor Martinez here against Tommy Malone. Been really bad against lefties so far this year and against righties. I mean, he's just an average pitcher who every once in a while gets shelled. We know Detroit capable of putting up a ton of runs. I like Victor Martinez a lot at $4,800.
Yeah, I like that Tiger stack overall. I mean, Cabrera's got the great matchup with Malone also. I don't mind Kinsler in this matchup. I'm sure we'll get to him at the next position. So that stack overall is one that I'm looking at pretty heavily tonight. As far as higher up options go, I like Adrian Gonzalez a little bit, 3,900 against Lincecum.
Crazy
Uh,
cheap.
yeah, it hasn't been great against him in his career. He does have 61 at bats against him, but a lot of that is against the once dominant Lincecum, so I'm not overly concerned about that. Not a huge BVP guy, but when the sample size gets over 50 or so, I start to look at it a little bit.
Yeah.
But like we said with Lincecum, he was a totally different pitcher 3 or 4 years ago, so makes it a little tough there also. The other guy I'm sure you're looking at a little bit today is Joey Votto. He's my top option right now. He's much pricier than Gonzalez, so that's why I mentioned Gonzalez first. I think he's probably the safest of the cash game plays. Votto's super high upside cash game and GPP play here, hitting second against right-hander Nelson. Votto's looked just absolutely fantastic lately.
Yeah, and he had a huge series last time
Yep.
against the Brewers. Looks like 6 for 13, 2 homers. I mean, he's definitely locked in right now, and I'm glad that you said it so I didn't have to. But yeah, of course Joey Votto will play. And one other guy I'll throw out there, more of a tournament play, but Crush Davis starting to hit the ball pretty well. 3 hits and a homer last night. He's 4,700, which might scare some people off, but Hector Noesi is not a pitcher to be avoiding, so I'm definitely going to get some Baltimore exposure tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, moving on to second base, where if you're paying up, it's Robinson Cano as your top option. It's not close. Giovanni Gallardo has a 433 WOBA allowed to lefties so far this year. Ton of good lefties, especially Cano and his one of his teammates over here. We'll get to in a minute. But $5,300 is pricey. That's because DraftKings knows this is a great matchup for Robinson Cano tonight.
Yeah, it definitely is. Hopefully this is when he breaks out in because he's been awfully boring to roster lately.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't pay for Cano to get 8 points. I'm trying to get 15 to 20.
yeah, exactly. D. Gordon's a guy that I'm going to mention at shortstop probably also. 4,400 facing the righty and G. I think he's a pretty solid option here with stolen bases. There's somebody else
really starting to get it going too.
Yeah, Walker is the other guy I was just looking for. What was his price on DraftKings? I can't find it.
4,400.
Yeah, okay. So he's right around that same range as Gordon. Devin Travis is another guy right at 4,400 that's just been crushing the ball. Facing Joe Kelly, who's a guy I like to target sometimes, even though it's a righty-righty matchup. We mentioned Kinsler hitting in the middle of that Tigers lineup against the lefty. I think the Tigers are going to score a ton of runs tonight. That's probably going to be a pretty popular stack. So it's an interesting one. It's one of those stacks that I'll probably use in cash games a little bit more than GPPs, just because I don't think you're going to get a huge edge there. But if the Tigers go off and you have 4 or 5 Tigers in your lineup in your cash game, I think you'll be in good shape.
Yeah. Cheap guy I'm going to mention here that's second base and shortstop eligible is Tim Beckham going against Adam Warren tonight. He's got 5 hits over his last 3 games. Not a guy with a ton of power, but I mean, he does have 3 homers already in the season, batting over 300. Been batting either 5th or 7th in that lineup most nights. So, I mean, if you want to go cheap, and you're going to need to go cheap somewhere, I really don't mind him as a punt play. Probably more at shortstop. But if you want to go really cheap, if he's in the lineup and you're not playing Lincecum, Alex Guerrero has been mashing the ball. He's batting 500 with 5 homers this year.
Yep.
I mean, even if he's hitting 6th or 7th in the order at $2,900, another guy at second base or shortstop eligibility, if no Lincecum, I love playing him if he's in the lineup.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, moving on to third base, where we already mentioned Cabrera and Davis. They have third base eligibility. Kyle Seager, pair him with Cano, get him in your lineups, and I'm going to be playing him a ton tonight at home against the bad righty who struggles against lefties. Everything going in his favor here. $4,700 for him, not a bad price. Manny Machado, already mentioned Hector Noesi, really struggling. He's been getting a nice lineup spot in the top half of the order. He's really getting it going too, and $4,500. His price is getting up there, but rightfully so.
Yeah, definitely. We mentioned Cabrera already, 5,100, middle of that Tiger stack also. Nolan Arenado is a guy that I like a little bit tonight at Arizona. He's at 4,500. Not a super cheap price, but I like Arizona as a hitter's ballpark. I think the Rockies are going to be a little bit underowned because everybody kind of just forgets about them when they go on the road. And I think that's going to be a couple interesting plays here. One other guy I kind of likes Pedro Alvarez tonight, facing Hamill for the Cubs. I just like what Alvarez has as far as power upside. He's been swinging the bat a little bit better lately. He's seen the ball better than I remember him doing recently. So he's an interesting GPP play for me this evening.
Yeah, one other guy I'm going to mention who, quick moment of silence for his 2K price tag, but his ownership should finally be below about 1,000% tonight. Jimmy Paredes is still absolutely on fire. 7 hits in his last 2 games, multi RBIs in each of his last 3 games, and 4 of his last 5. Not a lot of people will be on him now that his price has doubled, but I mean, still at 4K and a good matchup if he gets a nice lineup spot. Unfortunately, he was 7th last night, but I still think he's going to be a sneaky play tonight because people will be irritated that there's no longer that free bargain bin price tonight.
Yep, definitely.
All right, moving on to shortstop, where you already mentioned Colorado bats should be low or owned on the road as they usually are. Troy Tulowitzki, if you want to pay up, did get his second home run of the day, or of the season at $5,200. So, I mean, at that price tag, you're hoping he gets 2 home runs in a day, but definitely a massive upside against Chase Anderson, who pitched well this season, but was not a very good pitcher last year. So I don't mind targeting him. I'm with you there. I think that's going to be a nice cheap stack. Elsewhere at shortstop, some of those guys we mentioned earlier that have shortstop eligibility certainly in play. Hechavarria for the Marlins, been batting 8th, but if you look at this guy's logs, he's just everywhere. I mean, he's all over the place. 2, 4, 2, 1, 2 hits his last 5 games. I mean, the guy's scoring runs. He's stealing a couple bases. And, I mean, you hate the lineup spot, but at $3,800, I mean, he's seeing the ball really well right now.
Yeah, definitely. I feel pretty good about him. Hanley Ramirez is a guy I'll probably look at a little bit with shortstop eligibility on DraftKings. But if I'm going to spend $5,100, I'm probably just going to spend $5,200 on Tulo.
I hear it.
So that's going to hold me back a little bit there. I like Billy Hamilton against Nelson. He's a little bit slow to the plate. Hamilton's looked great on the bases the last few games. He's a guy that can score you 15 fantasy points, only getting on base 1 time. Only getting 1 hit, whatever. So I like him a little bit. His price is a little over what I'd like to pay for him, especially given the fact that there's not really anyone that I feel great about around him right now other than Votto. Yeah. Like, those are the 2 guys I really like on the Reds, and, I mean, I don't like the guys sitting in between them right now. Or after them, I mean. I think, Frazier hit 4 yesterday, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting stack, I think, against Milwaukee. If you want to do it, it'll be a low-owned one. There's just not a lot else at shortstop that I feel really good about. I'd like to be able to play John Segura because he's actually been hitting really well, but no one else in that lineup is.
Yeah, and it just kind of caps his upside for you.
Yeah, it really does. Like, I think I played him 2 or 3 days ago, and he went 2 for 4 and did nothing else because no one scored him. It was just really depressing.
You just get on base and you might as well just take a seat because you're not.
Yeah, right. Home. Exactly. Go back to the dugout. You got your hit.
Yeah, Ghostman on second. And then one other guy I'll mention. He got a nice lineup spot yesterday. Batted second, going up against Doug Fister tonight. Andrelton Simmons has been hitting the ball pretty well at $3,700, and I don't like him very much if he's back down the 7 hole where he usually bats. But if he's in the 2 hole, $3,700, he's not a bad value against Fister, who was good his first couple starts, but hasn't looked great. I mean, you look at he's definitely been a contact pitcher, and just to further that, I mean, he has a 9.8% strikeout rate this year. I mean, everybody's putting the ball in play against him, and Simmons the guy with a little bit of speed, so I think he might be able to maybe leg out a double, maybe get a couple hits against Fister tonight.
Yeah. One more guy I have to token mention like I do every day is Jimmy Rollins is only $3,300 again, at the top of that Dodgers lineup. We mentioned a couple other guys we like in that Dodgers lineup. Hard to argue with him for $3,300, but hasn't been doing anything special.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a great history against Lincecum, another guy that's faced him quite a few times. But like we mentioned with Gonzalez, not the same Lincecum, so I think you're okay playing him if you want for $3,300, hitting at the top of that order.
Yeah, that's a good call too. All right, moving on here to the outfield, where your top options on the DL, and so you're obviously not playing Carlos Gomez. Giancarlo Stanton really starting to heat up. He's $5,300 if you want to pay up. I don't really mind that. I don't know that it's a necessity. I think he's a tournament play definitely tonight. Some other guys, Adam Jones, still hot. He's at $4,800. I think that's a great price tag for him against Hector Noesi tonight. And some other guys, I mean, you've got Corey Dickerson is day-to-day right now. You don't know if he's going to play, but $5,300 tonight. He's probably going to be low owned, like you mentioned, as Colorado bats, assuming that he's in the lineup. So he's not a bad play. I like Gregory Polanco a lot at $4,600 against Jason Hamill, too.
Yeah, definitely. Angel Pagan is a guy I like against Anderson. We mentioned or against Brett Anderson. If you're not playing him, I think I'm going to have a decent amount of Brett Anderson, so that's going to keep me off Pagan. But for 3,600 hitting in the 3-hole against the lefty, Pagan has a little bit more power from the right side of the plate. I think he's a decent GPP play at worst. Jeff Francoeur is a guy that I keep playing and being totally fine that he goes 1-for-4 with 3 strikeouts.
Yeah.
He's 2,200 on DraftKings. He's stupid cheap on FanDuel too. I mean, he's that guy that like once Paredes has gone up now. I mean, he's going to end up in a lot of GPP lineups for me just because he's so cheap, hitting 4th in the order. Don't love the matchup with Lackey today, but you just can't find that cheap of a guy hitting the cleanup spot very often.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy with some big upside that should be lower owned tonight. Well, I think all of his teammates really in play. JD Martinez as well, but Yoenis Cespedes, we know he's got that massive double dog upside, and Tommy Milone, fly ball pitcher. Obviously, it's more of a pitcher's park, but he's got a ton of top shelf power, so I like him a lot in tournaments as a nice way to get some Tigers exposure at low ownership.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good call.
There's not a whole lot of cheap guys here in the outfield.
No, that's what else I was looking for that I liked.
DeAza at 3,800 is not in a bad spot, but he did get platooned out a couple days ago when a lefty came up by Steve Pearce. So maybe if Pearce is in the lineup as well, then you don't worry so much about that. But
yeah, that was on Friday when I played. I think I played 4 Orioles on FanDuel that day, and he was one of them.
Yeah, he came up with runners on 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, I know. I was really upset about that because I mean, my staff was going pretty well at that point because I had Davis and I think he had a home run that day and somebody else. I think it was Machado was hitting 2nd that day and had a decent day. They took Diaz out in that situation. It really stung because I ended up with minus 0.75 instead of if he had gotten a single there or something.
Or even a sack fly.
Yeah, that too.
Something.
There was one other guy that I was looking at that was pretty cheap earlier, but I can't remember who it was.
Para?
You mentioned him already, right?
Not today. I didn't, but
oh, okay. I thought you did for some reason. That must have been who it was then. Oh, and Ryan Rayburn is the other one. It's 2,800 on DraftKings.
Okay.
He was right below par right here. Rayburn hit 5th in the order against the last lefty they faced. I'm assuming he's probably going to do that again. Cleveland's got a ton of left-handed bats, so whenever they face a lefty, he hits pretty high up in the order because a lot of their lefties struggle with left-handed pitching. They mash right-handed pitching. I think they started 8 lefties against the last righty. So I like Rayburn in the middle of that order.
That's a great call. I mean, he's got great numbers against lefties, and like you mentioned, the rest of that lineup not so great. So I think he should. I think he bat cleanup the other day. I think.
Yeah, he might have.
It was
he definitely hit 5th. He definitely hit 5th last time I saw because I played him because he was 2,600 that day. Hitting in the middle of that lineup against a lefty, he's going to be a strong platoon play all year because he's not a guy that's going to put up massive numbers all the time because they don't face that many lefties, and he never plays against a righty because they have so many lefties.
That's a good point. Justin Maxwell is one other guy we got to mention at $3,100. Yep. Brett Anderson, we know, a ground ball pitcher, pitcher's park, but the guy, 3 homers in his last 5 games. He's $3,100. He'll probably be a pretty popular GPP play at that price, but I think he's got some great upside in this game.
Oh, yeah. One other guy I wanted to mention, top-end option, is Cruz. You mentioned Cano and Seager already for the Mariners. I think Cruz is in a pretty good spot here, too. I don't think pitching option is overly concerning, even though he's righty-righty. Cruz has looked great. I think that's an interesting stack, too, if you can get those 2 guys, maybe Cruz, and then work around that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's the revenge game twice removed, too.
Yep.
If you believe in that sort of ridiculous thing. But, definitely, if you're sacking the Cruz or Seager and Cano, getting Cruz in there makes a lot of sense, too, with his power. All right, that's going to wrap things up for us here on the DraftKings Daily Trot. Follow us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Check out all of our great content for tonight's action at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.